Welcome back to Beauty Marks Podcast, a space where we embrace marks acquired through our journey. My name is Elizabeth Savion, and welcome back to another episode. If you are new to this podcast or have been listening for a while, I would love for you to leave a review. All you have to do is go to Apple Podcasts, the purple app, search up Beauty Marks Podcast, go all the way down, and you will see all the reviews that some of you guys have already left. And I would love for you guys to rate and review, leave a comment, let me know what you're loving, what conversations you're really enjoying, what you recommend. Would love to hear from you. They honestly mean the world to me when I see them. And of course, I love also getting messages from you guys personally in my DMs, emails, letting me know what you're loving, what has helped you, because honestly, that makes this show even better. This whole podcast is really something that I love to do. It's my passion project, but it's also because I know that it's helping you. So before we get started on today's interview, I want to give you a trigger warning. We are talking about sexual abuse and we are talking about forgiveness. It is something that goes hand in hand, but this conversation was really touching and I know that this conversation is for someone, but if it is something that is triggering to you, maybe skip and just wait until next week's episode or go back to an episode that you haven't listened to yet. But aside from that, this conversation I know is going to help someone today. So let's just get right into it. Today, I'm very excited to have a special guest, Kay del Valle, which I actually met through social media. And I've known her for a while. She's doing amazing things and she has a small business and she's actually sharing her story for the first time today. So welcome, Kay.
Thank you so much, Elizabeth. I am so honored and happy to be here. Thank you for thinking of me. And I am so excited for everything that you're doing. You're such a boss.
Yes, no, I'm so ready to hear you because she has a YouTube channel. She's been on social media for a while, I feel. When did you start?
Social media, oh my goodness. I have no idea. It's been so long. I feel like a grandma of social media right now. And the thing is that I haven't been like crazy consistent. So I still have like my small little like friends that follow me,
Mm-hmm. No, but they
and
love
on
it.
YouTube,
So.
on YouTube itself, I have not even been on YouTube for a minute, but maybe I will start again soon. We'll see.
Mm-hmm. Well, so for those that don't know you, can you share what you're passionate about and a little bit about yourself?
Sure. So a little bit about me. I'm a wife and mama of two. We actually just had a little baby in April. She's already 6 months. I'm kind of mind blown because time flies so fast.
Mm-hmm.
But I
Yeah.
love being able to do life with my family. They're my first ministry, my number ones. I'm also now a small business owner of an online boutique, Grace Fluency. Our Instagram is Shop Grace Fluency, but that has definitely been a learning curve. Lots of happiness, lots of sad moments. You know, the roller coasters of a business owner. So that's been something that has been new, in addition to being a new mommy. So it's been like a lot of new things. And then honestly, I'm just passionate about people. I'm
Mm-hmm.
passionate about helping people. In my career, I help people grow. I help people get to the next level. And honestly, at the end of the day, I feel like God made me an encourager. So I just like to encourage people. And I truly love when people are winning. And yeah, I just love seeing people win.
Yeah, girl, I see that in you. You're definitely someone that's always uplifting. And even through your own business, which I love. You guys need to check it out, Shop Greets Fluency. And I just love the message and that you have and just kind of like everything that you've done over this past year, I feel like is very intentional. So I love that you're like literally a mom, an entrepreneur, like you're wearing so many hats, but you do it well. And I really wouldn't know that that you have so much going on because you like make sure to, do it, like do it and do it well.
Thank
So
you.
props to you. And thank you so much for joining me today. Can we get into talking about your story and your story of abuse?
Yes, of course. So my story, I was sexually abused by my stepfather. It happened for a few years when I was younger. I didn't realize what was going on. I felt like I knew it was not normal, but I didn't know at the same time. And then once I realized like what's happening is not okay, um, I feel like I was able to kind of like show my abuser, like, no, like this is not happening anymore. And he kind of got the point. So after that, things stopped. But I did end up learning later on that he was abusing other people. So that kind of like made my story like restart again, if that makes sense.
So when you say, let's go into it, because when you
Yeah.
say that you made him stop, or did you confront him about it? Was it, how old were you when it started and when it stopped?
So I would say that I was probably around 7 or 8 years old
Mm,
when it started. I don't remember honestly how old I was when it did stop. It was just kind of like something clicked, like this is not okay. And I guess the way that I made it stop, and I'm like using my fingers because I thought it had stopped, right?
mm-hmm.
Was just like if he was trying to do something that was abusive towards me, I would like be reluctant to it. I would like walk away. I would be like, I would actually say no. But it's not like I
Mm,
confronted him either in the sense like, what you're doing is wrong or anything like that, because I was still young. So
yeah.
I didn't feel comfortable being like, this is not right, you know?
Yeah. No, of course.
But yeah. So basically just like getting away from the situation is how I quote unquote stopped it from happening to myself.
Mm. And so when did you tell anybody when that happened? When did it come to light?
Well, actually, I didn't tell anyone until I found out that it was happening to other people. Um, and it was only them that I told. And I found this out that it happened to other people a little bit before I got married. So it's so funny because when you're planning for a wedding, it's like this beautiful thing, but also like your family wants to be involved. And my abuser was my stepfather. So he obviously wanted to walk me down the aisle, and I felt a lot of resentment towards him because of what happened to me. And I was like, no, I'm not going to give him the privilege to walk me down because I'm literally still hurting from that. Um, and so I told him I decided that my mom was gonna walk me down, and like it was just this ongoing like conversation of why, and I didn't want to say anything because I didn't want people to know. And
Mm.
then finally, I was one on one with him because he was a smoker, so he was smoking outside, and then I told him I don't want you to walk me down because of what you did to me when I was younger. And he like just looked at me like shocked, you know, and
Mm.
then walked away. And I went inside and I couldn't believe that I actually like said something about it. It was kind of like my first like brave moment against my
Yeah.
abuser, and I just was started to bawl because I just couldn't
Mm.
believe what happened. So then after that, like he didn't bother me about it, but I ended up speaking to close people about it. I don't want to say names or anything like that because I
Yeah.
don't want, because everyone has their own story, you know, and
Mm-hmm.
they're obviously super close to me, but I don't want to be like it was them because it's not my, you know, part to share their story.
Yeah.
So that's why I just keep them very like silent. I don't say their story because whenever they want to speak up, they can. But
Mm-hmm.
when I told close people about it, I found out that I wasn't the only one, and that burned a fire in me. It made me so angry, you know. So it's
Mm.
like crazy because dealing with trauma and healing, I feel like it was crazy that when it was about me, I didn't speak up. But as soon as I knew that it was about someone else, I realized I'm not alone. It has to stop. And this needs to be brought to the light. Like people need to know about it.
Yeah.
Because in my naive brain, I had thought that it stopped I really thought
Mm.
it's not happening to me. So it's kind of like it went away. But reality is it did not go away. And there was another victim, a few other victims. So it's like when it comes to drama, I realized that when you're a survivor of a traumatic experience, your brain is automatically going to put your trauma away. Like if
Mm.
your brain was a file cabinet, it would be in the very last file and it would say, do not open, because it's like
Mhm.
your brain's defense to like make sure that you're okay. So it almost makes you feel like it wasn't real and it didn't happen, you know? So like
Yeah.
when I brought this up, it was like the people that I had happened to, it was almost like, oh my gosh, that happened to me. Like it was almost like everyone was realizing that they're not alone and bringing those files back up and opening them, which is like a whole nother story, you know?
Hmm.
But yeah.
Wow. Well, first, that's insane to think that like he would want to walk you down the aisle. Like that like made me like so upset. Like when you said that, I was like, I cannot believe that. Like the audacity for someone to do that when what happened is kind of like, oh, let's just forget about it. And I feel like with sexual abuse especially, people do act that way. People do act like, oh, just like it was a mistake, or it was like one time, or like, oh, well, technically, like it happens, or like, well, let's protect the abuser, or let's not talk about it because that's wrong. So like it ends
Yeah.
up making a lot of the victims like end up suffering in silence, because they, like how
Yeah.
you said, like our brain does something that really protects us, which is like store it away. And I know people that have
Mm-hmm.
gone through that literally like for years they didn't process that until it was brought
Mm-hmm.
up, like how it was for you. How was that like growing up with your
It's
stepdad? Like was that
it's
like what
weird.
dynamic was that?
I feel like it's weird because it's almost like you have a love-hate relationship, because deep down you're hurt, but at the end of the day you kind of like try to forget it and make it seem like it didn't happen, so you try to focus on the good. And I feel like
Mm.
maybe that's where like my focus on the good things comes from in my life.
Mm.
But it's like you still, growing up, I still had a love for him because he was still like my father. He still
Mm.
cared. It's like it makes you almost feel kind of like crazy, because it's like he still cares for you. He's still like your father, but at the end of the day, he hurt you, and people that love you, they don't have the right to hurt you.
Mm.
Um, so that was like my, growing up, it was like he was a great dad, but at the same time, no, he wasn't. So I
Mm-hmm.
had to like go through that in therapy as well, because it almost makes you feel like you're crazy, like, because you
Mm.
love this person, but at the same time, you don't, because they hurt you. So it's just like getting over that.
Mm-hmm.
And I know when it comes to healing, something that I learned is that you can't heal from something that you don't confront.
Mm.
So it's about acknowledging it, talking about it, and seeking help. And if you've dealt with something traumatic, a lot of times what happens is you feel like it happened so long ago, so you're over it. You're over it. It happened so long ago. Whatever. It's in the back of my brain. I'm over it. But at the end of the day, you're just lying to yourself, because you don't realize the effects that it has in your future. And it really does affect your future. Maybe at that moment you weren't, but like even like going into being married, it started affecting me. Like, how can I not tell my mom what happened and start a new family? And then if I have kids, not want to bring them to her house with her not knowing what happened. And she'll be like,
Mm.
why don't you ever want them to come over? Like, these are the things that I started thinking about, like my future, because it really affects everything. It affects the people around you. It affects me as how I parent. Like, I parent differently. It affected me with men. I always have my guard up around men. It affects you with your partner, because they have to understand where you're at. It
Mm-hmm.
affects you, like you get triggered in the future. Like if you haven't dealt with it, you will get triggered. I just want to say
Mm-hmm.
that. Like even if it's just like through a movie or you have a nightmare about it, or something in the news that happened that it really triggers you, like you will get triggered because at the end of the day, it happens and it's in your brain, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So at the end of the day, something will end up triggering it one way or another.
Yeah. And that's very well said, like how you brought that up, that it's like just because you don't process it, I mean, just because you don't deal with it doesn't mean that it'll go away. Like it'll just manifest in another way in your life. And the more that you like don't confront it, it will literally, when the day that you bring it up or you get triggered, that's when you break down or you
Yes.
have an episode of something because you're like, wait, where did this come from? And it's something that you've buried and kept for such a long time that even if it happened 5, 10, 15 years ago, it's still like it just happened because you're like just opening that. And I'm sure that that was hard to process because you had kept that for years. And then
Yes.
finally, when your wedding's coming around and you're like, you kind of have to start dealing with that, like, bringing that up again, then I
Mm-hmm.
feel like that was probably very difficult for you. How did you process that? Like, did you end up telling your mom what happened or
Oh yeah.
what happened?
Um, I ended up telling my mom, and she was kind of like in shock, you know? I feel like it was
Mm-hmm.
just a shocker for everyone.
Mm,
She was in shock, and it took her time to process, like, what? And it's almost like,
mm,
why are you just telling me this now? Because
mm,
it's been years. So it was just, I feel like at the end of the day, when I brought it to light, it was like a shocker. And just like it affects the abuse, but it also affects everyone around them because
mm.
everyone now has to deal with that.
When did you tell her? Did you tell her before your wedding or after your
I
wedding?
did. I
Before?
told her before my wedding. Um, like I said, it was a shocker. She ended up confronting him on her own. She wanted to be the one to confront him. When like everything ended up unfolding, it's crazy because I ended up talking to people that I was really close to about it, and someone had said something to another person that they literally were so furious that they called the cops. So I ended up
Wow.
getting the cops involved. Which obviously, like, I don't know, when you say things like that, you never know how things are going to unfold. And
Mm-hmm.
sometimes, I mean, my intention was never like to get cops involved or anything like that. I just wanted people to know. So
Mm,
like when that happened and then cops just showed up to the house, I was like, oh my gosh, like what's happening? And
mm-hmm.
my sister wasn't home, so I thought something was happening with my sister, and the cops
Mm-hmm.
made like a little story so that they can get me to the side, asking me about quote unquote my sister, to really ask me like, well, what's going on.
Mm,
And it one of the victims that it happened to, that was not myself, was still a minor at the time.
mm.
So that's also why when the cops came, like it was like this big ordeal because one of them was still a minor.
Yeah.
So it just ended up being way big. It ended up being super big, super quick, and everything was just like a hit of like emotions. Like I was just in a
Mm-hmm.
whirlwind of, oh my gosh, this is happening.
Yeah, because that's like opening a can of worms. And
Yeah.
like, I think a lot of people don't talk about it though, because they're scared of that. And I'm
Yeah.
sure, I'm not going to assume what you're feeling, but I know that that was probably like how you just said, you're like, I wasn't trying to call the cops, but technically, someone that's abusing someone should go to jail. Like they are
Yeah.
endangered to other, how you said, like when it stopped with you, it ended up being with someone else. So, like that person,
Mhm.
you think it's like a pass, like, oh, well, maybe like, it was a mistake, or maybe they don't mean it, or maybe like, whatever the case may be. But then that causes for someone else, but they didn't get the consequence that they should have, because they do
Yeah.
deserve like that in reality. But at the same time, like most people are scared because they're like, well, I don't want a big family drama. And I
Mhm.
can't imagine like your wedding's happening. Like that's a lot going on all at the same time to process.
Yes. It was
Did
like
your
best
Mhm.
of my the best time of my life, but at the same time, the worst time, because it was like, I'm about to get married. I should be happy, but I'm dealing with these things that literally no one knows about except for me and my family, But it was like just a lot.
Did
All
he
happening at
end
the
up going to jail?
Yes, he did. He did end up going to jail.
Wow.
Yeah.
How was that process of people? Like, did you have people that were not believing you or
Yes, I did.
telling you that was making it up?
I did have people not believing me, saying that I'm a liar because you guys always look so happy. So where is this coming from? This can't be true. And obviously when people are saying that and your story, what happened, it's like it makes you feel like I can't believe that they would think I would make this up or that you would lie about something like that. Like, why would someone lie about that, So it was really heartbreaking when I knew that people weren't believing me.
Yeah,
it,
because
it,
you're
it
like, you have
was
no
yeah,
idea.
exactly. Like, and it was heartbreaking for everyone because finding this out, it's literally bringing up hurt for all sides, not just for the victim, for the family, for the family's kids, etc. Like, it's bringing up all of that pain. It's a lot of pain, and then people are just not okay with that, and they just want to find blame, instead of accepting what happened. They blame, or they try to justify what happened, or they make blame, or they just say no. And at the end of the day, it is what it is. That's what happened. And you can make something up in your mind if you want, if that's going to help you feel better. But at the end of the day, it's not dealing with it. It's not confronting it. It's just hiding and coming up with an excuse. Because to this day, I know people that have came up with an excuse for him on why he did what he did. And that baffles me. I'm like, I'm shocked that you make an excuse and make it okay, And like, for example, some excuses are, oh, he was probably doing drugs. I'm like, no, you can believe that if that makes you feel better, but that's not what was happening. Like, even if he did do drugs once in a while, like the amount of occurrences that happened into multiple people, he was not a druggy person, he was working, functioning, it's just a sickness that he had.
Yeah.
So like, that's just like those excuses, like it just makes you feel like when there's an excuse, it also makes you feel like you're lying or like you're not telling the truth, and it just justifies that person.
And you feel like, wow, like your whole life you haven't had to deal with it. Like you always had to defend yourself growing up with that, like because no one knew. And then now that everybody knows, there's still people that are kind of telling you that it's not real when you're like, you have no idea. So that's crazy. Thank you for sharing that. Like I know that I can only imagine how that whole process played out. I'm glad that it came to light, even though it was under the probably not most convenient circumstances, but I know that him going to jail or like, whatever ended up happening with how he was sentenced, but just knowing that there was other people, the truth came out of him. So how was the process of healing for you and even forgiveness? Because I know you have talked about that before, that you got to the point where you forgave him. And how was that for you?
I mean, when it comes to forgiveness, I feel like it jump-started my healing. I was able to actually talk to him and tell him that I forgave him. And it was a really emotional thing for me to do. Because when I forgave him, it's not like I had to realize that it wasn't because I was releasing him from his actions. It was me releasing him from my future, and taking his hold off of me. It's not about an apology either, because I was not expecting an apology from him. He did apologize, which honestly that was great, but at the end of the day, apologies don't really mean anything to your pain. It doesn't take your pain away. So it was more about cutting ends with a horrible connection. And for me, like, if I didn't forgive, I couldn't move forward healthy. So I did it for myself. As a Christian, how can I expect forgiveness if I can't forgive people, you know? And as a mother, how can I expect my kids to forgive if I don't lead by example in their lives? It's not easy, but I just have to surrender it to God consistently. And I know that it's better in his hands than in my own hands. So like that's my forgiveness journey, and it's just a constant like surrendering it to God.
I think that some people have the idea that forgiveness is like a one-time thing. And I feel like I've learned that forgiveness is whenever it comes up, it's like
Yes.
you letting it go. And if you ever get a memory or you get something from someone that has hurt you, because in general, so like, we are talking about sexual abuse, but this stems deep for things of people that have done harm to you, which can look in so many ways. So forgiveness is something that is a process, and you have to forgive sometimes, and you have to like let go, and doing it for you, like how you said, because at the end of the day, like forgive, even if someone apologizes to you, it doesn't take away everything that you experienced. And like how you said, because that's so true, it's like even if you do expect like, okay, like I want them to beg for forgiveness, but even those moments, they don't take away, like it isn't what you think it's going to be. Like you think that if
Yeah.
someone says I'm sorry in a certain way, or someone gets what they deserve, which what you think they deserve, and it doesn't work that way, unfortunately. Like it won't give you that a satisfaction to see someone else in that position, or to see someone hurting the way that you thought, like, because that's in you. um and so you releasing them is a really big part. And I can imagine that that was very difficult to walk through, but it's amazing to see that now you have your kids. And how has your own trauma affected you as a mother?
Feel like as a mother, it's hard to trust people around your
mm,
kids. And I know that that's like a normal motherly thing, but when you've been abused, it's like on 10,000.
mm,
You really don't trust people around them. Anyone that's even looking, it's like I find myself looking at anyone that would look at my kids. Like if you're looking at my kid, I'm looking at you, and I'm looking at how you're looking at them. So it's just like
well,
this crazy thing, but it's like I said, it's just giving it to God, because I cannot obsess over that. I cannot
mhm,
like continue to walk that way, because it's just going to be exhausting for myself spiritually. I just have
mhm,
to let God take it, and obviously be mindful of my family, but that's just been the biggest thing, like the trust factor. Even like
mm.
finding babysitters or anything like that, it's hard.
You're just like very aware
Yes.
of that reality. What
Mm-hmm.
has been like the hardest part once everything came out to light, you started dealing with it? What has been the hardest part, aside like how you said that your trust? Is there anything else that was hard for you in your forgiveness journey or your healing journey with all of this?
I feel like the hardest part of my forgiveness journey, it has been actually truly meaning it.
Mm,
I feel like one of the hardest parts of healing is dealing with guilt, because in trauma, as an abused person, you're always going to feel guilt. Like for me, it was the guilt of allowing it to happen. Why did I allow this to happen? And it's like using my maturity and my mindset right now to justify
mhm,
my innocent brain, which makes no sense. So I
mhm,
feel like that has been hard, like feeling in that guilt. And then just realizing like I did not allow it to happen. That's kind of like a lie that you tell yourself as an adult.
mhm,
Like you didn't allow it to happen. It was never your choice. And
Mm,
you shouldn't feel guilty because it's not had nothing to do with you. Like it wasn't your choice. And then the guilt of not speaking up earlier was another thing because
mm,
learning that there was future victims, I started putting the blame on myself. Like if I would have said something earlier, would it not have happened to them too? So then
mm,
it's like putting blame on yourself and guilt on yourself for something that they did. Again, they did, so it's not your fault. Dealing with family not believing you, making comments, saying that you're ruining the family, that is all a lie. That's a lie from hell. You
mhm.
didn't ruin the family. The abuser is the one that ruined the family. It was his doing.
Yeah.
And then, dealing with PTSD and surrendering that to God, that's just all been part of it.
Yeah. And did that take you a few years, or how do you feel like, because when someone goes through something like that, but, any type of traumatic event, um, you know, you don't want to deal with all the feelings that come with that, because that's a lot. But how did that work for you when you were like, was that something that like through years of therapy, or just like through working on yourself over time? Like, how did that work? Was there a timeline that you would say?
I can't really say there was a timeline.
Mhm.
Um, it took a lot of time, you know, but
Mhm.
it's like this trauma, it's been in your life for years. You can't expect it to go away just because you said it, just because you let
Mhm.
someone know. Like you still have to deal with that. So in terms of a timeline, there's not really a timeline. It's just obviously for me, therapy very helped me a lot because it opened my eyes to coming to these realizations. Honestly, it opened my eyes to that. It opened my eyes to like what trauma does to me, how I
Mhm.
react, how I um get triggered, and like how I can deal with it. I
Mhm.
feel like at the end of the day, like you will get triggered, you will react somehow, but finding ways to pray about it, deal with it, and surrender it to God, that's like the part of the healing that was needed for me to learn. Um, instead of just tucking it away, crying to myself.
Yeah. So, are any last encouragement or words that you have for someone that has been through something like this, or has been hurt in general, that has been through, someone that they have to forgive, or something that has really hurt them?
Healing is a process. Past trauma, it affects more than just you. You should find healthy ways to go through it. For me, community is everything. You know, during this process, I did have close friends, my church lifting me up. They were there for me. Like as I was going through the emotions, community was huge for me. The devil wants you to think that you're alone. And
Mm-hmm.
isolation is only going to bring depression. It's only going to bring guilt. It's only going to bring doubt. It's going to keep you in the same place, if not worse. So just opening up and sharing the pain with others. And that doesn't mean like doing a broadcast or like what we're doing right now, but just someone that you're close to, someone that is a safe place for you, share so that you can feel that you're not alone. It
Mm-hmm.
helps you heal and it might help others heal as well because you don't know people's stories. But at the end of the day, you shouldn't have to go through this alone. And one of the things that helped me, that I'll leave you with this, is that this secret is not yours to keep. It's theirs. You can expose it. It's going to be messy, but it's going to be worth it for your healing.
Mm-hmm. Wow. Thank you, Kay, for sharing your story and for just encouraging someone today, that maybe needed that reminder, but also needed to hear, because sometimes you don't realize the power of sharing your story, and how every time you share it, you can unlock someone else's freedom, and you take that weight off of you. Every time you talk about it, you are letting kind of like healing. It's part of the healing process. I feel like the more you
Yeah.
talk about it, the more it doesn't have a hold on you anymore.
Mm.
So thank you so much for sharing. Honestly, I really enjoyed our conversation and thank you for being open and honest. And I know it's not easy, but thank you so much for doing so today.
Thank you so much for having me again.
Where can people connect with you or find everything that you're doing um, on social media?
So on social media, my Instagram is Dear Del Valle, DearDelValle. I have my shop Instagram linked on there as well if you ever wanted to check that out.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Kay. And make sure, guys, to follow her. And if you have any questions or anything, she's very approachable. So make sure to hit her up. And again, thank you guys so much for tuning into this week's episode. I hope that you got something out of it. And if you really enjoyed today's conversation, make sure to share it, subscribe to this podcast, and follow me at Elizabeth Savvy for more. Thank you guys again, and we'll see you next week.